Hello and welcome to UpperPen. My name is Dakota, and I interview authors and narrators and other bookish folks almost every week. And this week, I am lucky enough to talk with Amy Archer about her new book, Nemesis Mine. If you enjoy this conversation, please think about subscribing or liking or sharing the video. It helps both me and Amy, so thank you. And thank you, Amy, for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
So, for folks who've not yet heard, what is Nemesis Mine?
Nemesis Mine is my debut novel, and it's a queer fantasy rom-com. It's about a villain who's sort of hit his mid-30s, and he's starting to worry that he's a little bit past his sell-by date, his best-by date. So he's looking for a way to improve his reputation, and he decides to team up with a kind of beloved hero of the realm in order to fake a feud, for both their benefits. But in faking that feud, they end up catching real feelings for each other. So that's where the rom comes into the com, I guess.
It's really great because you start off with him, with Cyrus, who's the main character, and he's cutting a rope on a bridge because he just
Mm.
likes to do evil every day, just a little bit.
He does. He does. Yeah. I feel like Cyrus's motto is less kind of like one good deed a day is the best way to go about life, and more like one bad deed a day makes him feel better about himself. So yeah, he's definitely a villain. Remains to be seen through the book whether he's got a softer side, but that is definitely how we meet him.
And so it sounds like a lot of his villainous deeds are just inconveniences to the people of
Mm.
his town, right? Because every villain has a town or something.
Yeah, yeah. The way that I've kind of written it is that in the world of Nemesis Mine, there's a Champions Federation, and the champions kind of have to be elected to be the elected champion of a particular town, and then they're kind of the steward, and they stand up for the people of that town, and they are the ones who look after those people, but also kind of get a lot of benefits. So sort of like slightly tongue-in-cheek leaning into the influencer culture and things that we see in our own world. That is the benefit that some of the champions see from like becoming the elected champion. But Cyrus isn't a champion, he's a wrongdoer. So the Champions Federation has its opposition, if you like, which is the Wrongdoers Guild, which is what Cyrus has come up with, and they just go out of their way to undo all the good that the champions do, basically. But Cyrus, you're right, it is more inconveniencing people. When I was writing it, I wanted people to like him despite what he does. So I kind of did have a few lines in my head about things that he should and shouldn't do in order to remain genuinely villainous, but also a little bit charming. Like I wanted people to kind of like quirk a bit of a smile when they were listening to some of his like ranting monologues about things, rather than just thinking like, oh, he's a real piece of work and I'm finding it hard to warm to him. I kind of hoped that people would like him despite some of the things he does.
I think it really helps that you wrote the story from his point of view, right? So we get his inner monologue a lot, which is hilarious because he's always kind of like, why don't they appreciate me?
He's a very catty person. Yeah. It was always gonna be his just his point of view from draft one. That was the case. And it's funny because it didn't actually occur to me until maybe three drafts in that I could have done a dual POV swapping between Cyrus and Maximilian, who is the champion that he teams up with. Um, I think I felt sort of so strongly bonded to Cyrus from the moment that I started writing him that I really wanted to stick with him throughout. And I also think there's something nice about seeing the villain soften towards the hero because it's the more unexpected way, as opposed to like you would if it was from Max's point of view and he starts to soften towards Cyrus, it could be very sweet, but it's a little bit more accepted and a bit more expected. Whereas Cyrus kind of going from where we meet him in the book, just like the odd little thought starting to flicker through his mind about how Max isn't really so bad, and maybe the dimple in his cheek is a little bit cute rather than disgusting. It just felt more fun to write and hopefully more fun to read as well.
So I think it's really fun to read, and I get the impression if you did this from Maximilian's point of view, you could tread a little bit too close to dark romance instead of romantic comedy.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, and that's funny, I guess, as well, because it's kind of like by sticking with the villain, even though he is the darker of the two, it keeps the tone a bit more lighthearted
Yeah.
because it's a little bit like because the book doesn't kind of follow a structure of the bad guy realizing he's wrong and kind of like I mean, like, without spoiling things, like there are certain changes of heart that he has throughout the book, but it's not kind of like a story about Cyrus's path to goodness and light. Um, and I think if it was from Max's point of view, you would maybe feel that he had like failed in his task, that that doesn't happen. So yeah, I think definitely a good thing to stick with Cy.
Um, so that also kind of brings up this the magic in the world. So it's explained early that there's this idea that there are four types of magic given down
Mhm.
from the gods. But sometimes people have different magic.
Oh, yeah, sometimes they lie.
So
Um,
how does the magic work here?
so I didn't want this to be a kind of a world where people can train to get magic, to learn magic, or that everybody would be kind of born with a sort of a starting place, if you like, that's equal. I wanted it to be a little bit more, some people are born with it and some people aren't, because I felt that tied better into the world that I wanted to build, where there are certain inequalities that are built into the world. It is done in a kind of a light-hearted way, and a lot of things are a little bit more of like a poke at our own world and a little bit tongue in cheek. But for example, the champions, like the ones who are the stewards of like the sort of bigger, grander cities in Africa, which is the world in which it's set. If you're born with kind of like a quite a mighty power, like the ability to control storms or something, you're just born with a head start. So that is it is kind of like random allocation of magic, but the way that it works within the world is that they've kind of it's not necessarily that this is what it is, but people believe that this is what it is, that each magic is tied to a god or goddess of the four seasons. So I think like if a wrongdoer, for example, had the power to like wither things and make them turn to dust, people would see that as a power that was linked to the god of autumn because things decay in autumn, and that's where that link is. Cyrus wishes that was his power. It's not. His is a little bit cuter than that, which was just me having fun with him, frankly, and kind of like just going out of my way to write things that would annoy him, and then having fun with his kind of like mental rant as he realizes what I've done.
Is it okay to talk about what his magic is?
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, firstly, what Cyrus claims his magic is that he can cause earthquakes, because what villain doesn't want the ability to kind of quell people with a look because they think that if you go against them, they will bring your town down around your ears. So that's what he's claiming. What he actually has is magic that's related to the goddess of spring. So he can kind of nurture flowers and he can make plants grow, and he can coax little daisies out of the out of the soil and things like that. Um, so Cyrus is a keen gardener, which was also something that was there right from the start. He's a bit of a loner. He's quite antisocial, so him and his garden, just sort of, pottering around, secretly tending to his flowers, is what he's doing when he's not threatening the peasants of Africa.
He also has a bit of a fun backstory, right? So he showed only one other person besides his parents his power, and that person laughed at him. And
Yeah.
then he's like, "No, I'm evil now." Like,
Yeah. I think that kind of ties into something else that was there right from the start. Cyrus really did kind of appear fully formed to me, just as he developed obviously as I went along and drafted, but there were certain things that were very strong from the start. And one of the things that I really wanted to be in the book when I started writing it, because I felt that it tied into the comedic aspect, is that he is not a villain with a super traumatic backstory where, the world has just kicked him so hard that he has sort of felt there's no other option for him but to turn evil. No, he's just kind of been mildly inconvenienced and had somebody scoff at him and just, as you say, just been like, that's it, this will never happen to me again. I've got to punish everybody for this. Um, yeah, he shows a child that he kind of wants to impress when he's a little kid, a flower that he's grown, and the kid laughs at him. So Cyrus decides that he's just gonna sort of off screen, not as graphically as like right in front of you. He gets rid of that child and then decides this is the life for him from that point on.
It's never explicitly stated if he kills the child. He just
Yeah. That
gets
people
rid of
can
him.
yeah, people can decide if they would like to lean into the idea that this child was really never seen again, then by all means they can. If they like to think that Cyrus got rid of him in a way where he was found a couple of hours later, that's also fine.
I kind of like this duality here, though, because it feels like Cyrus, like he in his mind has gotten rid of this child. He's not in the world and he never has to see him again, but really he could just be at home, a
Yeah.
little peeved that he was pushed in the water.
Yeah. And I think that like Cyrus is like bless him, he's a little bit ineffective. Like that is sort of an ongoing thing throughout the book. It gets better for him in certain ways because the magic that we've just been talking about, he does go on a little bit of a journey of kind of more self-acceptance, which leads to his powers getting stronger and the realization that he can actually do more than coax out flowers. He's just been so annoyed and embarrassed by his powers that he's never really tried to explore how far that link to plant life could go. But he's angry that people don't respect him as much as they should, but there's also a question over whether or not he has ever achieved anything that is kind of worthy of their great fear and respect. He's a little bit ineffective, he's a little bit lazy, and he's a very petty man, and those are the ingredients that were sort of thrown into his character.
And then conversely, we have Maximilian, who's this beautiful hero, and he's going around and he's trying to win the hero seat in his area. Um, and he's bored being a hero. Like he's just
Yeah.
tired of it.
Yeah. I'm very fond of Max, and I think there's I think when I wrote him there was a little bit of like when we look at celebrity culture and you look at people with very flashy lives on Instagram, and you sometimes have a bit of a thought of like, what is it like behind the camera? Like, how many times did you have to take that shot before you deemed it to be good enough for like the algorithm and things like that? And I wanted to kind of weave a little bit of that into Max's character, on the surface to the people that he's um being kind of the champion of. On the surface, it looks like he has a great life, but how long can you continue that? How long can you keep going with it? And also, there's an element of like what is good enough as time goes by. Like the things that he has done to be a champion of his city, which is called Heliarth, when he was like 15 years younger, it kind of he has to keep increasing, and it's a little bit of a question of how much more has he got to give. So actually, out of the two of them, Max kind of has a more solid reason to be frustrated because he's been genuinely working hard at this thing, and he's no longer seeing as much of the reward as he wants to. He's getting a bit bored, as you say. He's a bit tired of it, and he's getting people kind of wanting more from him all the time. So that is kind of how he gets to the point at which he would ever consider working with somebody like Cyrus, whereas Cyrus is a little bit more sat at home in his brooding chair, twiddling his thumbs and wondering why adoration doesn't come to him.
Um, him sitting at home and brooding. You did one of the funniest things I've seen in in rom-coms where you literally have him set the scene for his brooding. He he's arranging things. He has to go to his dark corner where it's a little cold and uncomfortable, and he has to lounge specifically.
Yeah, he very specifically has to like cross his legs in a certain way in the idea that like you the reader are sort of viewing him, but he's almost aware of that. Like in his head, he is sort of perceiving how you are looking at him in that moment.
I think
And
of
yeah,
it
I've just
like
seen what you
that.
picked up. Yeah. Just like that. Just like that. It's a good pose.
It's the for folks who are just listening, it's the cover for Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. And the character is clearly reposed in a chair very
Mhm.
menacingly.
Yes, yes. Cyrus probably in the world of Africa read that book and thought, yeah, yeah, that's a great pose. I'm gonna have that.
So the book is clearly comedy. Like it is funny throughout. When people are thinking of romantasy, do you think there's a difference between what they're envisioning romantasy as and romantic comedy in a fantasy setting?
Yeah, I think that was kind of a big thing for me as to why I wanted to write Nemesis because I think there's a lot of great romantasy out there and I think people have conversations all the time about the romantasy surge and like how many books are acquired with romantasy and such but like people read what they want to read don't they like it's there's so much good out there and you can't tell people what they like what they want um and there's a lot of romantic books that I really love, and I think they absolutely have their space. But I did really want to kind of almost take a bit of more of a niche corner in this romantasy massive sandbox that we've got to play with. And the idea of writing something that was funny just really appealed to me because I think there is a lot of space within romantasy to do that as well because there are all these tropes that like are beloved by writers and readers alike, but we do sort of sometimes take them very seriously. Like sometimes in the marketing, if you're like, oh, and like there was only one bed or something, and people are like, oh, I know what to expect because of this, and
Mhm.
that's great. But I just really liked the idea of taking those tropes and writing them, but with a very kind of like a tongue-in-cheek side eye on it the entire time, where I guess I wanted to kind of give people something that was like a little bit more surprising, like they think they know what to expect, but it will keep sort of wriggling free of their expectations and delivering something else. So I guess, I hope that's kind of what Nemesis does.
I feel like it occupies a similar space as a assistant to the villain and that
Mm,
sort of thing, but it consistently is more funny, where that one dips between dramatic and funny quite a bit. Um,
yeah.
and so I
Mm,
think it is kind of like pushing a whole new subsection of romantasy, I guess. I think of it more of as a romantic comedy, though.
yeah. Yeah. I think if I like whenever I'm asked to describe what the book is, I always say that it is a fantasy rom-com because the fantasy setting is very important to it.
Mhm.
But I also think that people will know what to expect more by rom-com, whereas if you did go into Nemesis expecting like a more sort of I don't know, regular romantasy, you like, I don't know, maybe you would find Cyrus annoying in the fact that like he's just not playing by the rules that romantasy usually plays by, which was deliberate. But I think for my own, this is what I wanted to write, and so that readers know what to expect and what they might like and what they're getting into, I think rom-com is definitely a better descriptor for it.
It does straddle this tenuous line of like cozy fantasy, romantasy, things like that, but it doesn't quite fit into either. So I do
Mm.
want to be clear. It is funny and it is fantasy.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you think it's funny. I I wrote the first draft of Nemesis quite quickly and I was sat chuckling to myself as I was writing it. And then I had a few moments where I would have to kind of like I would maybe catch my reflection in the laptop and I'd be laughing and I'd be like, "Oh, is this just funny to me? Am I just sat entertaining myself here, having a little chuckle at some sentence that I've written?" And then I suppose it's like it's always vulnerable when you show somebody something that you've written, but showing somebody something that you've written where you're trying to be funny was like a whole new level of like faintly alarming because I was like I laughed at this. This made me giggle, and the thought of getting straight faces in response was like slightly terrifying. So I'm very glad that it made you laugh.
So when you were writing it, you intended it to be funny. Um, and that is a very scary thing because you have to have timing down, I feel like. So
Mm.
when you're going through and editing, did you have to ever pull back on moments or like really amp up the silly here?
Yeah, there were a few moments where my editors were like, I think we can go a little bit further here. There were just often moments in dialogue where because it was both of my editors, I had one in London and one in New York, working on it simultaneously with me, both for HarperCollins. Um, they really got to know the characters as well as I did, and they really kind of like wormed their way into Cyrus's head, which was really fun for the three of us to work on together. We were like leaving notes in the comments of the Word documents with just like little memes all the time. It was great. But because they got to know him so well, there would sometimes be moments of dialogue where one of them would be like, I think there's a like Cyrus would be thinking this, so why don't we kind of like go down that route and explore that? Which was really fun for me as the writer because I'd be like, wow, you really know my character. That's really fun. Um, in terms of kind of like holding back, I guess there were only a couple of moments where they were sometimes like, "Don't forget, we want people to like him," and I was like, "Okay, okay, I guess he shouldn't like do this horrible thing to somebody." Only like a milder version of it. But largely they did kind of like really trust me with his character and I guess like the stepping stones we were taking to try and make it humorous throughout. But obviously balancing the love story with it, which was maybe the biggest challenge of all, was keeping the humorous tone whilst also giving room to breathe to like an actual sincere and genuine love story that opens up between them.
So the love story is not a surprise. Like the whole point of it is it's a romantic comedy.
Mhm.
But it is quite slowly built up to because they are opposites, right? They're these enemies.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself wanting to start it earlier, or were you always kind of like it's almost like a third of, or maybe like a quarter into the book that it starts to really be a romantic?
Yeah, I honestly probably the other way. I was having so much fun with them as enemies that I just could have kept going like that for quite a long time. I think it was very important to me that the enemies part of enemies to lovers felt earned, and I didn't want it to be insta love. I didn't want it to be they kind of vaguely dislike each other, but by their first meeting you can already see how they might end up like kissing on the doorstep outside at the end of this meeting. I wanted to throw up as many barriers between the two of them as I kind of plausibly could, whilst also fitting it into like an appropriate fantasy rom-com word count. It was tempting the more I wrote them and I kind of like tried to work on the chemistry between them. It was tempting to throw in more and more moments of that kind of that lingering eye contact, that sexual chemistry building between them. But I personally, I really love slow burn, and it's my favorite thing. So I don't think there was ever a risk of me kind of like doing anything other than like maybe even putting on the brakes a little bit. I really wanted, or not to drag it out because that sounds negative, but I really wanted it to feel like they had worked through a lot and kind of both overcome quite a lot until they got to the point at which their relationship shifts to romance. And I also think because it was Cyrus's point of view, anything other than it being slow burn would have felt really out of character for him because he had a lot he had a lot to work on and a lot to overcome, and even in terms of not only finding Maximilian attractive but recognizing that he did, and then going from I find him attractive but still annoying to I find him attractive but also I think I'm I like him as a person as well. Um, and I think, I mean, the romance between them, like it is romantic, I think. I hope like that's what I was going for. I didn't want it to be just like lust between them. By the time that these two enemies get to the point where anything happens between them, it's there are emotions there, and they kind of took quite a while to brew, I would say.
I do like the slow burn books, so I'm with you on this one. Were they always going to be romantically linked then?
Yeah, yeah. I remember I had the idea was basically like hero and villain, and then I was thinking about the trope of fake dating and then how you could twist that to fake hating. Um, and it was always going to be fake hating turns into like something else right from the start. When I sent it to my agent, it was basically like a two line kind of synopsis, which was like hero meets villain, works together, this happens, that happens, they fall in love. What do you think?
Okay, so back up here. You had an agent before you wrote the book.
Yeah, I got my agent in 2022, and I'd written a couple of books, I think. I was kind of into sci-fi before I've always been into fantasy and sci-fi, but the things that I was focusing on at the time were sci-fi. So I wrote a couple of sci-fi books that I worked on with my agent. But the sci-fi market is a little bit trickier and certainly not as kind of not as huge as fantasy and particularly romantasy at this moment. So I kind of got to the point where I thought, well, I really want to get a book deal. I really want to be an author, and I do because I love sci-fi and I love fantasy. Maybe it's an idea to put sci-fi down for a little while, hopefully to go back to, and then pick up the other side of my interest and write a book there and see what happens. And it was all quite quick. I think I wrote the first draft in like 2 months, 3 months, and then I think 6 months after that first draft, it had sold to Harper.
Wow.
So it was very quick. Yeah. Um, yeah.
So cool though.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was definitely a whirlwind. It was amazing.
Also, I'm just saying I love sci-fi more than I love fantasy, so like if you
Oh,
ever go back
really?
to it,
Oh,
I'm here
I
for
would
it.
love to. I would love to. I've got like my bookcase next to me. I've got like three shelves full of Star Trek stuff. I love Star Trek original. So yeah, it's always at the back of my mind. It's one of those things.
One time my husband really hurt my feelings because he said a lot of sci-fi is just window dressing. Um,
Oh no.
and I was like, you're mean. Go away.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I don't want to talk to you now.
um, so there was quite a bit of back and forth between you and your editors, right, with the book.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think how long it took. I think we did maybe three drafts together from the maybe four from the draft that had sold to them. And we kind of took it in. I really liked how they worked on it with me. We took it in sections of kind of like firstly working on the characters and going through a real overhaul of what are the character motivations and like what is Max getting out of this scene? What does Cyrus want ultimately from that and things like that. And we did a lot of character work. And then in the next one, we picked up on world building. And then on the third one, we kind of picked up on any character things that had come about as a result of the changes in world building and things like that. So I really enjoyed editing it. I prefer editing to first drafts because I like a first draft, but also like when you're going from something that's really polished to like the sky was blue, the grass was green in the first draft, it's a little bit difficult. But no, I had a great time working on it with both my editors. And like I say, they really got into the characters, and I felt like all along that they really, really got both Cyrus and Max, which felt really important, particularly Cyrus, because obviously with it being you're in his head for the entire book, and he treads that line, as we've said, between he's absolutely 100% a villain, And you can't kind of avoid that fact. I don't know whether like some people might be a bit surprised by the fact that he is sort of unapologetically a villain from the first page to the last page. But I did want to keep him in that space. I wanted to soften him for Max, but not necessarily for the rest of us, if you know what I mean. So that feels like a very particular character to get in the head of, but my editors were really good with it.
Did it ever feel like they were pushy about anything, or were they pretty much letting you do what you needed to do?
No, they really let me do because I had no idea what to expect because obviously I had worked on editing books with my agent before, and we had worked on those couple of sci-fi ones. We kind of like had a working relationship down pat in the way that we worked. But I'm a debut author. It was my first go, so I had no idea what to really expect from working with a publisher, like especially, a big publisher like HarperCollins. But they were just really great. I kind of went into it thinking like, how does this work? I don't really know because I think a lot of like it's great that podcasts like this exist because a lot of author life and author work seems so sort of mysterious and behind the veil when you're on the other side of it. But they were not pushy at all. They were very much I think my US editor said a couple of times, which stuck in my head. She was like, "I'm just throwing out ideas, and you can say I hate that and put it in the bin. Like that's fine. You do not have to do this. It is just a suggestion." But as it happened, like a lot of their ideas were really good. And I went into the editing process very much thinking like. This is my first time doing this. I have a lot to learn. I don't want to be kind of like, these are my characters and nobody knows better than me what to do. So if somebody is saying, well, I read it and I thought this, even though you were trying to convey that, that is like a fair point because you can't kind of like pretend that you were a first time reader when you're writing it and you can't there might be things that you've convinced yourself are really clear that really aren't. So I just wanted to kind of learn from them, I guess, as much as I could. And they both had some really great ideas. There are a couple of lines in the book that will always make me smile because they are kind of like I remember the conversations that spawned those comments, and it was kind of like me and my two editors on a Zoom call, just sort of throwing ideas back and forth and getting excited about the book and excited about Cyrus's voice and things. And then somebody would make a comment which led to, hang on a minute, this could happen, and then that could lead to Max saying this, and then blah blah blah. And then there are a few moments like that in the book, which, like, probably when the three of us read it, we're like, oh, I remember that conversation.
Those are lovely moments, though, because it's nice to have people looking at your work, but also having a very limited number of people looking at your work. Because
Mm.
if it's too many, there's too many ideas, there's too many contrary opinions, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It is very nice having a kind of trusted set of eyes to look at something and say, yes, this works, or yes, this kind of works, and I see what you're trying to do, but here are some ideas that you can feel free to kind of like take and hone and work with, um, and pull something better out of it. And I think it definitely was, the drafts. It's really funny. Like I just said that I don't particularly like first drafts. There are some weird things that I know I left in that first draft that I now cringe at the thought of. Like my agent she read that. She knows what was in there that like nobody else does now because the book is like as published. Like there was this whole random storyline about Maximilian having like a range of blondies named after him from some bakery. And I swear I wrote so many words about these random blondies. I can only assume I was a bit hungry when I was writing it. It's been cut. It will never find its way back in. But yeah, first draft's one of those things that you go back and you read and you hope to see the I guess I've heard some writers talk about like marble and clay. Like the first draft is kind of like a hunk of clay, which hopefully has like a seam of gemstone running through it. I think that's definitely true with Nemesis.
So also it's so much easier to work with something that's already written down
Mm.
and add to it or like subtract from it than to have nothing. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And I think that I think you as the writer probably feel better about your work when your work has been honing something and making it sound really good, as opposed to sort of dragging a first draft into existence. I think there are certain chapters in first drafts I've written where things have just come out very well formed in the first place, and I've been like, yep, that is exactly what I wanted to convey. And there are certain chapters in Nemesis where it really hasn't changed much from the first draft, but it's nice for the other bits, the bits that aren't so clean, it is definitely nice getting to the point where they're more polished and you can read what you've written and be like, yep, this is all coming together, and I can kind of see all the different threads being pulled together and pulled together neatly, as opposed to just sort of having a chaotic ball of wool and being like, this is my baby. This is my hard work for the day.
um, is there going to be more in this world, or are you kind of done here?
I would love to. At the moment, it's just it is a standalone is the answer. But I would love to go back to it at some point if the opportunity arose. I genuinely like I said before, like I feel like I bonded with Cyrus so tightly that I'm like, one day, just let me back at him, please.
He's just an old, withered, you know, wrongdoer, and he's still just pushing kids.
Yeah, that would actually be really funny. Like senior Cyrus and Max, what went on in their life like 40 years after the events of Nemesis Mine.
Um, was this for a one book deal or did you sign for anything else?
Yeah, it was just a one book deal, so it was just Nemesis. And I think I got the deal in October 2024. And now obviously it comes out in June. It's currently April when we're filming this, so it's all of a sudden alarmingly close.
It always seems to like I always think it takes so long to do, and then suddenly something is right there. Um, so
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely crept up on me. But it's great. It's been very exciting. I really enjoyed the editing process. Like I said, and then the things like seeing the covers for the first time and stuff like that. That is a thrill like no other so far. Maybe like seeing the book on the shelf will top it, but I think seeing the covers for the first time was sort of a wow, I can't believe this is actually happening moment.
are there two different covers, one for the UK, one for the US?
Yeah, they are. They're a bit blurry, but they are. I'm trying to point behind me there. So the US cover is this one, which is people can't see if they're just on audio, but it's a little bit more kind of contemporary and modern,
Mhm.
with some kind of like floral aspects to tie into Cyrus's magic. And the UK cover has gone for intense chemistry of Cyrus and Max staring at each other very intensely and holding each other at knife point. So two different vibes for the different covers, but I love both of them very much.
I like the US cover, but I think I like the UK cover just a little bit more because it gives the funny.
Yeah, it is. I'm hoping that it's like a little bit different as well when because I mean obviously like when I'm British, so walking into Waterstones and you see so many covers and like so many of them are so gorgeous.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that the kind of the audacity of the two of them staring at each other like that in public, I'm hoping will draw people's eye to the book. So we shall see.
Are you working on anything right now?
I am. I'm working on another rom-com set in a sort of fantasy world, but it's very different in tone from Nemesis. Um, and this one is sapphic, so I'm kind
Ooh.
of it's not related to Nemesis at all, but I'm sort of thinking of it as a bit of like a sister book. Like the boys have had their chance to shine in Nemesis, so it's quite refreshing to step away from them and write one that's a little bit more about the women.
I do like that there's so many like queer books now. So like I kind of
Mm.
think that it's fun that people are inhabiting this space a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like when we were talking about earlier about the the Romantasy sandpit being kind of huge, and the room for comedy within that, I think there is a lot of potential for so many stories that combine romance and fantasy, because romantasy is sort of taken on its own identity in a sense, hasn't it? When people say romantasy, they think that they know the type of book you mean sort of quite exactly based on that one word. But, as we know, all it means is like romantic fantasy. So it's a fantasy world with a romance in it. And I think there is so much scope for so many stories that can be told there. And I think maybe the initial surge was sort of very, very hetero.
I think we froze. Oh no. Are you still there? Um, we just froze. I'm so sorry.
That's fine, don't worry.
Um, so you were saying fantasy or romantasy when it first started was what, Sarah J. Maas, or like that's what people thought of, right?
Mm, yeah. I think there was just it's almost like there's this very specific identity that people think
Mm.
that they think that that's what romantasy is. And if you say that a book is romantasy, they sort of have a preconceived idea in their head of exactly what it is. But I think there is so much scope for so many stories to be told, and for it kind of opens it up for lots of different stories to be told, and also for lots of different readers to see themselves in those worlds. And at the end of the day, it's like if you want to sort of read a fantasy that has somebody like you in it, that's like some great escapism that should be open to everybody, no matter who you are, no matter who you love.
I do think that, people have always wanted this like queerness in fantasy because you see so many like unofficial pairings, right? Like Frodo and Sam and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, like I love Star Trek. And as we know, like Star Trek started a whole lot of
Ooh.
things.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yes, it did.
but I get, yeah, you're right. It shows that people, if you take Star Trek as the example, like people watched that show and they saw room for a romance that the show didn't kind of have space for at the time, still doesn't. But they saw it and they kind of had a dream about what that could look like. And it's nice that publishing now, and hopefully more going on in like future years, it's nice that publishing seems to be opening the door a little wider to let those stories be told.
Yeah. I do like in Star Trek though that it's ambiguous because then I can pair anybody I want.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think there is something about sometimes characters not getting together, which
Yeah.
goes against the writing of the rom-com books. Like I like X-Files as well, but I think that the best parts of Mulder and Scully's relationship are the ambiguous parts. Which again, it's like you said, did I want to like hurry up the point at which Cyrus and Max get together? I was just having lots of fun in that like sort of ambiguous what's going on here phase. I could just spend all day playing in that.
I'm one of those terrible, terrible people where I will be like, oh, these people need to be together. Clearly, they're supposed to be together. And then as soon as they get together, I'm like, I'm a little less interested.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it is the build up, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you know where it's going. You know what the writer's building to. You're excited to be taken along for the ride, and you don't want it to feel anticlimactic when it gets there. And it's kind of like, well, I was invested because I was waiting for them to kiss,
Yeah.
and now they've kissed, and it's kind of a little bit like, oh, like what is there to sort of keep me interested?
Yeah.
Which for me, clearly, I was like, no, 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 stay with me. Cyrus has got some more funny thoughts to share.
Well, they have a lot more to do in Nemesis Mine too, because there's that tension between the hero and the villain
Mm.
and how society's going to perceive them. And this is a very thought about thing in the book. They're like talking about it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the first challenge is for them to accept their feelings,
Mhm.
particularly Cyrus. The second challenge, once they have accepted their feelings, is the realization that it is also a forbidden love because they are a hero and a villain, and because Max has this reputation that he's got to uphold, because that's a thing within the book that if it got found out that they are together, the bad part of it for Cyrus is that people might think that he is emotional and that doesn't look good on his villain brand. But there could be an aspect of people thinking that he's just messing with Max, in which case he could potentially claw it back. But for Max, there's like, God, like you kissed him, like what's wrong with you? Like there's a lot that he's got a lot to lose. And that is kind of where the book hopefully keeps the stakes going a little bit, that it's not just about them getting together, it's about them finding a way to exist in this world once they have realized that they are essentially hopelessly in love with each other.
The one thing I was worried about was that one of them would have to give up their identity to be
Mm.
together.
Yeah.
And I think you did this really well. Like, no, nobody has to be like give in to the other person's identity, you know?
Yeah, I did an event with Harper Voyager last year where they asked, one of the questions that they asked me was something like, if there was one takeaway message from Nemesis Mine, what would it be? And I, the answer that I gave was something along the lines of like there will always be somebody to match your freak. And I think that was what I was sort of trying to, like, they accept each other. They just do, like, as it is. Cyrus finds it within his blackened heart to accept Max as he is. And he realizes that Max isn't as perfect as he's been portraying. He realizes that Max has some secrets of his own, that Max isn't the kind of poster boy that he was taught to hate and took great enjoyment in hating, you could say. Um, but at the end of the day, like he looks at Max as a whole and he's like, yes, like he is mine and I love him as he is. And Max is doing the exact same thing for Cyrus. It's not a case of I love him, but I just wish he was a little less this, or I wish he was a little less in general. Like Cyrus is what you might call a handful. But Max is like perfectly like he adores him as he is. And I really, really wanted that to be very strong by the ending, that there's no kind of question that they are going to bicker until their dying day. There's no doubt about that. It's not that it's all sunshine and roses, but it is a very kind of sincere acceptance of each other, which hopefully kind of sits well within the comedy, that it is a hopefully a funny book, but it does have this kind of like real sincerity at the heart of it, I think.
I do think the best romances do that, where they let their characters be who they are,
Mm.
without compromise, right? Or not compromising who they are, but like maybe the things that they're doing, right? So sometimes there's
Yeah.
compromise, but um, I don't know. I like that your characters are your characters till the end.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that came across. I didn't want it to be Cyrus's route to the good side, like I said, because if Cyrus turned into a champion or a champion's assistant or something like that, he would no longer be Cyrus.
Mhm.
And I did originally, my like Max was a little bit more villainous at the end than he is in the final book, and my editors were a bit like, like I think you're pushing that, and I think I was, and like they
Mhm.
sort of saw Max's character, and they were like, oh, I don't think he would kind of go that far, so I did kind of change Max's ending slightly, but the kind of conclusion that I came to when I reread it and I read my editor's comments, and they were completely right, in their feedback, was that I was almost falling prey to changing Max a little bit to be more like Cyrus. And they were like, no, I don't think Max would do that. And then I took a step back and I was like, no, he wouldn't. And the sort of hopefully the magic of the two of them is that they do work together as they are.
Mhm.
So with my editor's help, Max remained Max to the end, and Cyrus was just always Cyrus, like whispering in my ear at all times of day.
I appreciate your editor very much and that you were willing to listen to them.
Yes, yeah, yeah. But I think at the same time, like I did want, like, obviously the sort of the final scenes of the book. It's kind of like a bit of the two of them against the world type vibe,
No
where
spoilers, though.
yeah, it's kind of like who from if you changed your perspective from Cyrus to another character, it's like how does this look to the outside eye? But I was very aware of that, and I just sort of accepted it, and I was a bit like, but this is the story that I want to tell, and it's their story.
Yeah.
It's not how it looks like if it's like a story that you read in the news. It is Cyrus and Max's story, and this is how it's going to look, basically. And also like it is a fantasy rom-com, but it's from the point of view of a villain, and like we've said, he remains a villain throughout. So there are certain things that you just have to accept when you're inside the head of what Cyrus would hope to be one of the most feared wrongdoers of Attica.
Clearly, I really enjoy the book. And I hope people will also enjoy it. It comes out June 8th, correct?
18th. It's 18th in the UK and 23rd in the US.
Okay. So June 18th and June 23rd in the US where I am. That's where
Hmm.
I'll be getting it.
Hmm.
And for folks who want to kind of follow you and your career, is there somewhere that they can do that?
Yep. I have an author Instagram profile which is Amy Eliza Archer. Amy AMY.
Okay. And do you have like a website or anything?
Not currently. I need to get on that. It's one of those things that I started excitedly doing when I got the book deal, and then I got distracted by the book, and now I'm like, oh, the time has come.
Just slip someone some money on Fiverr and they'll make it for you.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good tip.
Is there anywhere that folks can buy signed copies of the book?
Um, kind of in the pipeline at the moment, so that is something that I will probably put on Instagram as and when I have the details for. But I would absolutely, I have my Sharpies ready. I would absolutely love to sign some copies.
And there's gonna be special editions, I imagine. So I'll be excited to see what they are.
I hope so. It would be very, very cool to see.
I bet you'll get a fairy loot or an owl crate or something.
Oh, that would be the dream.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
And again, the book is out June 23rd and June 18th in the UK. And if you've enjoyed the conversation, please go follow Amy Eliza Archer on Instagram and follow the podcast because we do conversations like this a lot. So thank you again, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to anyone who's listened, and I hope you enjoyed the book.
And I hope everybody out there has a lovely, lovely day. Bye.
Bye.